So this is the Starlink Gen 3 Pivot Mount. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing an unboxing, going through all the kit contents, going over all the supplies you need, and finally doing a step-by-step tutorial on how exactly to set up and install this Starlink Pivot Mount for the Gen 3 Starlink antenna. Along the way, I'll be giving you my thoughts and opinions, kind of a mini review on how I like this, how easy it is to install, and how well it works with the Gen 3 Starlink. So the Gen 3 standard pivot mount costs $74, and you can purchase it directly from Starlink at their online shop. I'll put a URL in the description below. So the pivot mount is designed to be installed directly to a shingle roof. It can adjust to varying angles up to about 90 degrees, and that allows you to mount it on virtually any pitch of roof. So ideally this is for shingled, asphalt shingle type roofs, and you're going to be drilling directly into the roof surface. So unlike the standard wall mount that I've also done a video on where you bolt it to an exterior wall or the fascia board, this one's going to go directly into shingles, and they do provide some waterproofing tape and sealant in the kit itself. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's do an unboxing and see what all comes included in this pivot mount kit. So if we open it up here, as always, typically with Starlink, you have an instruction sheet. Pretty simple stuff. I will walk you through step by step on how to do all this, so I won't worry about this right now. But in the kit, we have, let's go first of all with the hardware. So we have a little bit of a hardware kit here, which is going to include, looks like some water sealing tape, some cable routing clips, and 2 of the lag screws that are used to secure it into the structure of your home. We also have the mast section. So as you know, with the Gen 3 standard dish, it doesn't come included with a mast. It has that little kickstand. So this is what gives you some vertical separation between the mount and the dish itself. You get a Gen 3 adapter plate. So this will snap into the mast, and then this will replace the kickstand on the Gen 3 dish. So this will just snap right in place on the bottom of the Gen 3. And I'll get into all that in way more detail in the tutorial. And then finally in this kit, we have the pivot mount section itself. So as you can see right here, you get about 90 degrees worth of adjustment here. So how this is gonna work, if we pretend like this box is our roof, you're gonna bolt the pivot mount onto your roof directly to the shingles using the included hardware. You're gonna adjust this mast section until it's vertical, and then you'll slide that mast and the mast adapter with the Gen 3 dish into it, locking it in place. So as far as supplies and tools needed for this job, you're gonna want a drill with a 1/4 inch drill bit. You're gonna want either an impact driver like this with a 9/16 socket, or you can just use the standard ratchet and a 9/16 socket. You're gonna need tape measure or stud finder, some way to be able to find a structural member on your roof, because the lag bolts need to be drilled directly into like a rafter or something like that. You can't just drill it into plywood. So you're gonna need some way to be able to find those rafters. And then finally, you'll want a level to make sure that that mast section is completely vertical. Otherwise, you'll get an error message in the Starlink app if you have that angle set up wrong. Okay, so now that we've gone over everything that's in the kit and the supplies needed, let's jump right into the installation. Okay, so for my installation location, I'm gonna be doing it up here on my garage roof. You can see I've got a pretty traditional shingle roof here. So the idea is going to be drill a couple holes for securing the lag screws to. I'm gonna be placing it, about right here. Generally, you want it toward the peak of your roof just to get as much height as possible, but make sure you use the Starlink app in advance to check for obstructions in your specific installation location, just to make sure that trees or buildings or anything around you aren't going to be obstructing your Starlink's view. So like I said, I'm going to be placing the mount about right here or so, a little bit ways down from the ridge. And in my case, I already know that I've got a rafter about 16 inches from the edge of the roof. Did a little preparation beforehand and measured the thickness of the siding and the plywood and everything. From here to about 16 inches in, I know that I've got my first rafter here. So that's where I'm going to be locating my pilot holes, 2 pilot holes. I'm going to be positioning the mount about right here to kind of use as my guide. Now the instruction manual for this Gen 3 pivot mount says to use a marking pen. I didn't have one, this just seems a lot easier. So I'm just going to double check 16 on top, 16 on the bottom here exactly. So that's about where I'm going to be drilling my pilot holes. I'm going to go ahead and do that with the mount in place. And again, like I said, you're going to need a drill with a 1/4 inch, I believe that's 6 millimeter in metric. You're going to need a drill bit for that. So the idea here is to go directly into a structural member, hopefully a rafter, and you just drill the hole. Okay. Pilot holes are drilled. Now we can move our mount out of the way, because what we need to do next is use the included sealant tape to cover these holes, make them waterproof, or at least more water resistant. So the Starlink provides two steps here for your water membrane, I guess you could call it. So the first step are these 2 big blobs of sticky black stuff, and the instructions say to take these, form them into a ball with your fingers, and then shove it as best you can into your pilot hole that you just drilled. So I'm going to try to work a little bit of that in there as much as I can, and then I'm just going to flatten out the rest of it like so. So I'm going to repeat with the other one here. Stuff is super sticky, kind of hard to deal with. Okay, so I'm going to form that into a ball. And then press it as best I can into that hole. Okay, so the next thing it wants us to do is use these 2 pieces of, I guess it's a similar material, just in a strip type fashion. It wants us to put them over the holes like this. And I'm actually going to kind of get this one up on this first shingle right there, just like that. And we'll get the next one in place here. Just like that. Okay, so I guess the idea with these strips is that it kind of seals around the hole you just made and around the black ball of whatever sealant it is. And then it also kind of seals this edge around here, so it's going to sit like that. And another kind of tip for you that I just figured out, it's really hard to see where your pilot hole is once you have those 2 layers of whatever this stuff is, sealant. So I went ahead and just kind of tapped a little indentation in it just so I could see where to actually put the pivot mount. So now that we've got the ball of sealant inside the holes and then these 2 strips of sealant tape across the top and bottom holes, we're ready to actually put the pivot mount in place. Now you'll notice on the pivot mount itself you've got an arrow. This should point up toward your ridge. And that's because the mount actually doesn't even move anymore this way. So if you install it like this, backwards, you're not going to be able to use it. So make sure that arrow is pointed toward the ridge. Okay, so now we're ready just to put the mount in place. Try to get it in position as best I can. And once the holes are in position over your pilot holes, you can go ahead and get the lag screws started. Make sure they're in the right pilot hole that we drilled. Okay. And now we're ready for our socket. So I've got an impact driver, which is going to make this super quick. So just tighten your mount down to your roof. You don't need it super cranked down, but you need to make sure to have them driven all the way in to a rafter to be able to handle the max amount of wind that this can handle. that's the first round of tightening. I still got a little bit more room to go there. Now it's really cranking it down onto the roof. Give it another round there, and now we're good to go. Okay, so our lag screws are in place, and that, I tell you what, that is not going anywhere. I think the dish, the plastic around the mount adapter will probably break before wind takes this part off the roof. So the next step, now that we have our lag screws installed, is to grab our level and get this mast, this little short mast section perfectly level, or plumb, as somebody in one of my previous videos commented. Okay, so as you can see there, we've got it nice and plumb. All right, and you tighten down this adjustment screw. This does, I don't know if you can see it, but it has little plastic teeth that kind of lock in place. So not only are you using friction from the screw here, but you're also getting these little notches that really lock that vertically. So yeah, that's not moving. We're good to go. So now that we've got the actual mount plate installed, everything's good to go here, we're ready to actually put the dish on. And before we do that, we've got to insert the mast adapter and the mast into the Gen 3 dish. Okay, so now we're back down here on the ground and we've got our Gen 3 dish. We've removed the kickstand already. And by the way, if you don't know how to do that, there's just a little plastic tab right here that you lift up on and it should slide right out. So we've got the mast adapter plate and the mast from the Gen 3 Pivot Mount kit, and we need to join these two pieces together. So it only goes in one way, you can't really screw it up. I always screw it up on camera, but it goes just like that, and it will snap in place. Now, a word of warning, you have to be ready to actually do this before you snap it in place because it's extremely difficult to get back off of there. So once you have it the right orientation, just press it in firmly, and you'll hear a very loud audible click, and now you're secure. So with this adapter installed to the mast, now you just slide this right in, and I'm going to wait until I'm up on the roof, but I'll show you the cable in detail while we're on the ground because it's easier to film here. So the way the cable works, the Gen 3 cable, as you know, is the same on both ends, so it doesn't matter which way you route it. But once you're up on the roof, or whenever you're ready, you take your cable end, one of them, and you insert it through this slot. Starlink says to not do it through the bottom, so you want to go through the slot, and you'll feed it up through the mast adapter plate. And you can see this little channel right here. It's got a channel just for the cable to sit. And then when you're finally ready, what you'll want to do is plug in the cable to the dish, tab side up. You'll just press it in, and you can tell that it's seated all the way in because the moisture seal is completely flush with this little plastic housing. Once that is done, you simply slide the mast plate into position and it snaps in place. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so now we are good to go as far as the dish. I will go ahead and carry this up the ladder with my cable. And by the way, the previous pivot mount for the Generation 2, they used to include a carrying bag. They do not do that for the Gen 3. So no carrying bags for any of the mounts, which is kind of a shame. It made carrying the dish up a ladder a lot easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now, climb up the ladder with the roof and the cable, and we'll see you up there. Okay, made it up the roof okay, so I'm heading over to the mount now. Gonna go ahead and set my cable aside. Now we're ready to install the mast into the pivot mount. And just to kind of recap, I've got this already plumb, completely vertical, tightened it down and everything. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen this adjustment screw. This adjustment screw controls the rotation of this mast right here. So with the Gen 3, you have to manually aim it, which I will do in the next section. But for now, go ahead and loosen that so you can insert the mast section down into the pivot mount. Okay, it's that easy. So it just slides right on in, and as you can see, you can rotate it freely until you tighten this down, but don't do that quite yet, because what you need to do next is plug in your cable power everything on, and then do the Gen 3 alignment procedure. Okay, so the final part of the installation tutorial for the Gen 3 pivot mount is going to be the manual alignment for this dish. So as you remember, we've got this screw loosened here so that we can rotate it. And if you go to your Starlink app, connect to your Wi-Fi, remember your stuff has to be all powered on to do this step, you're going to see probably an error message here that says Starlink misaligned. If you don't see this, you can also go down and manually check it by clicking alignment here. You can also just click on the error message in the app. So this brings you to this Starlink alignment tool. So all you need to do is watch your screen and rotate the dish at the same time to match this little gray box outline on the screen. So as you can see, as I turn the dish, it's turning on the app as well, which is kind of cool if you ask me. But you can see once I hit this, and it gives you a pretty wide, like look how much room that I can work with here and still be good. And that's because this has a 110-degree field of view. So this isn't very picky about the specific alignment. Okay, so once you have it aligned to where the Starlink app says you're aligned, you just tighten down this thumb screw here as tight as you can get it. Doesn't need to be super locked down. And now it can't rotate anymore. So we're good to go. You can hit done. You should be online. And the installation now for this Gen 3 pivot mount is complete. So as far as my initial impressions and my kind of mini review as I've gone through this installation process, I can say that it's pretty straightforward as far as a review goes. If you're comfortable using tools, some basic power tools, and drilling into your roof, this is a pretty easy process. It's not that big of a deal. You just got those 2 lag screws. You just have to remember to properly utilize the little water membrane thing, the little sticky tape that they provide for you. But it's also really nice that they provide that in the kit. The mount itself seems sturdy as far as where you attach it to the roof. I think this could handle a lot of wind, just this part itself. The part that I'm questioning is just the Gen 3 attachment structure to begin with. As you can see right here, you do have a little bit of wiggle room, and that's the case with every single Gen 3 mount that I've tested. You just always have that little amount of wiggle room. It's not going to rotate, it's not going to fly off of there or anything, like I can't lift it out. But you always have that in place, and I don't know why. I don't know why they designed it like that. Maybe that's a feature, maybe that's just a poor design. I have no clue. But I can tell you from having all these mounts installed and tested with my own Gen 3 dish here, it doesn't make any difference at all to the performance of your dish. Remember, this is an active phased array antenna. You can use this while you're driving 80 miles an hour down the highway. They use it on commercial airliners. Movement, sway does not matter at all. So this might bother you from just kind of an OCD standpoint. I know it kind of does for me as far as just the fact that it wiggles, but it does not affect the performance or the reliability in any way. I think overall people would avoid this mount mainly because you have to drill into your roof directly. So if you see my other videos with the ridgeline mount or the standard wall mount, those you can avoid drilling directly into your shingles, which I think most people would prefer. The problem with those is that, not the ridgeline, but the problem with the wall mount is that you have kind of limited options if you have to go onto an exterior wall or the fascia board on the edge of your roof. You really only have a couple sides of your house where that actually works. With the pivot mount here, you have a much wider area along your roof where you can actually drill into. So it's a little bit more flexible in that way, but I can understand why people wouldn't want to drill into the roof. So that's it for this review. If you have any questions or feedback about this product or about the video, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.